Hi, I'm Patricia, and this is Investigating Vegan Life with Patricia Kathleen. This series features interviews and conversations I conduct with experts from food and fashion to tech and agriculture, from medicine and science to health and humanitarian arenas. Our inquiry is an effort to examine the variety of industries and lifestyle tenets in the world of vegan life. To that end, we will cover topics that have revealed themselves as common and integral when exploring veganism. The dialogue captured here is part of our ongoing effort to host transparent and honest rhetoric for those of you who, like myself, find great value in hearing the expertise and opinions of individuals who have dedicated their work and lives to their ideals. You can find information about myself and my podcast at patriciakathleen.com. Welcome to Investigating Vegan Life. Now let's start the conversation. Hi everyone and welcome back. I am your host Patricia and I am sitting down today with Chef Bettina Campolucci Bordi. She is a plant-based author, recipe developer, vegan food consultant, content creator, and retreat host. You can find out more about her on her website, www.bettinaskitchen.com. Welcome, Bettina.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for having me as well. I can't wait to kind of climb through. You've got a really prolific reach as a chef and an author and a cookbook developer. I'm excited to get into everything. But before we do that, a quick roadmap for everyone listening for today's podcast. We'll first look at Bettina's academic and professional history, and then we will turn our attention towards unpacking her story, her businesses and books. We will also look at her website and the different information that offers, as well as her services. And then we will get into specific questions that I have regarding the rhetoric around vegan eating and living during the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, and pieces of advice that Bettina might have. And then we will look at the differences between some key categories, particularly when it comes to the world of culinary and the intersection of that and vegan life. And we'll wrap everything up with the goals that Bettina may have for herself and her business endeavors in the next 1 to 3 years, as well as advice for those of you that are looking to get involved in what she is doing and how she's working everything. Before I start on getting too much into the minutia of everything, Bettina, I'm hoping you can walk us through kind of a brief description of your academic background and early professional life that helps develop the platform of how you came into launching your website and your books.
Absolutely. So my background has always been in food and beverage, and it's what I used to work in restaurants from the age of 15. The difference was that I was always front of house, so I wasn't actually in the kitchen when I first started out. I was always really passionate about cooking and about food, and grew up in a family where we would go on holiday and it wasn't the museums that we remembered, it would be the meal that we had or the market that we went to.
Yeah.
And grew up with 2 grandmothers that loved cooking. So my passion was always cooking. However, it was something that I was advised not to follow in terms of being a chef to begin with. And the closest I could come to or be near food would be to go down the food and beverage route. So my degree is actually in hotel management and business.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I worked in.
So why were you turned away? Who was advising you not to get near the food industry?
I think my parents were like, no, there's no future in being a chef. It's hard work. It doesn't pay well. Yeah, you know, if you're academic, you don't go down that route. And so I was like, okay, what can I study, or what can I have a degree in that sort of envelope that includes food and being in that industry. So front of house for many, many years. And then when I was 26 or 27, this opportunity came up. I was the food and beverage manager of this sort of resort that was running retreats. And I met a business partner and we thought we can do this so much better. And by starting this new business, which was within the wellness industry, I decided that rather than finding a chef that would cook on these retreats, I would want to do the cooking. So this was, 7 to 8 years ago now. And that is how I sort of got into plant-based cooking. At the time, it was very popular to do juice detoxes. So we decided that we wanted to let our clients eat food.
Yeah.
And the best way of doing that was going vegan, or what I like to call plant-based, but we'll get to that bit later on.
Yeah.
And also decided to do gluten-free cooking. So it was vegan and gluten-free, and basically ran the first retreat and got really passionate about that sort of cooking. And that is what initially sparked this whole journey that I entered into. And remember, 7 to 8.
Oh, Bettina, I lost you. Hang on one second. Go back to when you said remember.
So remember that 7 to 8 years ago, veganism was definitely not as widespread as it is today.
Right. Yeah.
And everyone was wondering, what are you doing? Why are you doing vegan food? Why are you doing gluten-free? And this business was started in southern Spain, which is even sort of, it's more traditional in terms of how they cook. And my color palette was going to food markets, because eating seasonally and going to a food market was the best and cheapest way to source food, and using basics like grains and rice and sort of good produce. So that became the basis of my cooking.
So it was originally to fulfill this kind of retreat mentality. Did you have these breaks in between where you would go off and develop new recipes for the next load of retreat customers, or how did that work?
So when I started out, this was sort of pre-social media and blogging and stuff like that. So I had a few cookbooks written by Swedish cookbook authors that were sort of touching base on sort of raw vegan cuisine, and I had those as basis. And then I stumbled across Matthew Kenny, who was doing online classes and also had a cooking school in LA. So on one of our holidays, I convinced my husband to fly over to LA. And I did one of his courses and was hooked. So I ended up doing a few of his courses. I started going to more food expos. And, you know, with passion comes a curiosity. So your work becomes your passion and vice versa. So with all of that, I started recipe developing, because, you know, if a recipe is good, then you obviously want to make it again. And Instagram came along as well, and Instagram was a tool for me to remember what I'd cooked on all of these retreats.
Oh, nice.
So
little journal.
Exactly. So if you've been on my Instagram, it's overhead shots with me holding a plate, basically. And I wear funky socks that that people started to notice, and that became a thing. So yeah, Instagram was a way of journaling food, because it was a way of remembering the dishes that I'd cooked on different retreats. And that took off along with vegan cooking, and brands came along, and that's how sort of recipe development came along as well, in terms of fast forward a few years, and vegan and gluten-free cooking became ginormous all of a sudden.
Yeah, you were in a really interesting time period. I feel like just my personal journey as a vegan person, it's been during a time period that I don't think will recreate itself again, in that, you know, when I was doing it, it was myself, Buddhist monks, and some hippies.
Yeah,
starting out. You know, it was just this fringe
exactly.
moment. People would gasp. Some people were like, I don't understand that. That's just being a vegetarian. There was all these different things, but it's amazing how mainstream it's become. And not amazing, it's actually music to my ears, because I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have ended up with a friend in sight, how much I talked about the benefits of veganism. And it's good to have other people kind of touting it now too. And for you as a chef, it's interesting to have even, I was speaking to a vegan baker, and she was saying, you know, it's almost free to be a regular baker. In the United States, the subsidies that are attached to milk and eggs and things like that make it practically free to use those items. And she was like, you know, you talk about arrowroot, and I'm still paying top dollar for that. There's no competition bringing that price down. And so
Yeah.
as chefs, and you know, still maintaining integrity with ingredients and what you do, I think as the vegan world opens up more, it will become more accessible, and you'll be able to produce more of it and those types of things. I'm wondering, you have 2 books that I've looked over. We talked about this before recording, and one of them is the 7-Day Vegan Challenge, and another one is the Happy Food, Fast, Fresh, Simple Vegan. And I'm wondering, while we're unpacking your journey and your story, I kind of want to gloss over these. I want to say, 7-Day Vegan Challenge came first. Is that correct?
No, the other
Okay,
way around.
Happy
Yeah.
Food. Okay, and then so
Happy food came first.
let's start with Happy Food, Fast, Fresh, Simple Vegan. It's so I have the summary here is, in Happy Food, you share a collection of easy and delicious plant-based recipes that anyone can incorporate in their busy life. Whether you're looking to eat more veggies or you've decided to turn vegan but don't want to compromise on taste, it's the book for you. Your philosophies are simple, and that food is meant to make you happy. So can you kind of draw out for the audience listening, in this food, we get our first introduction to some of your recipes and your style of cooking. What is the overall ethos that you really meant to convey for your reader and practitioners from this cookbook?
I think for me, it's always been really important to let the food do the talking and not sort of mm, not be trapped by labels. So if it tastes good, if it looks good, then it doesn't matter whether it's, I think, hang on a second. How do I say this? With the wellness industry and with a lot of people coming on retreats, there was a lot of presumptions on what vegan food was going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
So one prime example is a lot of partners or husbands coming with their wives and sort of been talked into going on a yoga retreat and, you know, having to eat vegan food for a week. So my philosophy was always like, if I can get those type of people on board and to make them completely forget about the label of, say, vegan food and just enjoy the food itself for what it is. It looks beautiful, it tastes beautiful, it's comforting, and it makes you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Then I've sort of nailed it, and it doesn't matter under what label the food stands under. So that's the type of philosophy that I've tried to follow. And also using good basic ingredients, not having to go to a supermarket and spending hundreds of dollars on specialty ingredients that are flown halfway across the world, to be able to achieve good results. So with, you know, you can achieve tasty food with very little, and you can let natural colors do the talking. There's not much that you have to alter or change to get good tasty food. And I think there's always a misconception that vegan food, well, was anyways, that vegan food was boring, that it was not filling enough or not comforting. So those are the people that I target, the people that have those preconceptions, and also inspiring people to include and eat more vegetables, without being afraid to give it a go. So, and also bringing back the forgotten vegetables, I call them, you know, potatoes and carrots and onions and cabbage and all of these amazing vegetables that we have that, you know, you would normally receive on a weekly basis if you subscribe to Vegetable Box, and then you just don't know what to do with them. But there's so many different ways that we can incorporate.
Yeah, and I think you've integrated a lot of talk about cabbage in particular, and I'm a massive fan of all varieties of cabbage, and how it's overlooked. You can bake it, you can steam it. There's so many things that you can do to cabbage that, you know, most people view it as like a lettuce, and so you and I had a great deal in common in that way. I'm curious if this book is the baptismal moment that you're kind of describing, where you're bringing people into this kind of uncomplicated, not fussy, beautifully looking, wonderfully tasting vegan like dietary moment. Then how does your second book, 7-Day Vegan Challenge, for you, a really quick summary on that? It's curious about veganism, but already recoiling at visions of expensive whole food stores, your grumbling stomach, and an insatiable craving for cheese, then this is the book for you. In 7-Day Vegan Challenge, Bettina shows that with a little bit of planning, anyone can go vegan for a week. So it seems like you've almost taken on, you've done the introductory with your first book, and in the 7-1, you're almost challenging people to give it a shot. How would you differentiate the two, or how would you say the second one came along and kind of changed your scope or refined it of like plant-based eating?
I think it's almost, I think you're right in assuming that the 7-Day Vegan Challenge came first, because it's almost like Happy Food was this collection of recipes that I've cooked all over the world on numerous wellness retreats, and it's sort of my last 7 life.
Oh, Bettina, I lost you really quickly. Are you there?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, you said it's almost like...
So the 7-Day Vegan Challenge, so the Happy Food is almost like, not a Bible, but it's almost like the basis, and the recipes are a little slightly more involved and complicated. And what I wanted to achieve with the 7-Day Vegan Challenge was a simplified version of recipes that you can cook on an everyday basis. And then, yes, I would say it's the other way around. Even though Happy Food came first, if you have the opportunity to sort of, now that both of them are out there, I would get 7-Day Vegan Challenge first, and then I would move on to Happy Food, even though they came out the other way around. So as an introduction to plant-based food, I would definitely go with the 7-Day Vegan Challenge, and then sort of graduate to Happy Food, where the recipes are more involved. They're slightly more complicated. They're still really simple. However, the recipes in 7-Day Vegan Challenge are very simplified. And also, I allowed myself to be okay with the fact that if you don't want to make hummus from scratch, you can buy shop bought hummus. If you don't want to make vegan cheese from scratch, then it's okay to buy shop bought vegan cheese. It's almost like it's a book for the people that either love cooking, but also for the people that don't, because there are options for both of you.
Yeah,
basically. So it's as involved or as not involved as you like it. So I'd definitely say that that's the starter point.
Well, loving cooking, you know, and having time for it are two different things as well. You know, during the shelter in place, I've talked to so many friends who I would never assume loved cooking, and they're just adoring the time they're having with their ovens and all these this bread making craze that has swept across my country, the sourdough revolution. But I think that it's also, you know, in everyday lives in a lot of contemporary societies, the first thing that gets slashed out of our adult time curriculum is the time to cook. And so having these kinds of in-between moments where you talk about on the 7-Day Vegan Challenge, like brekkie on the go, and then one pot cooking, like kind of all moments meet. And I think that that's interesting. I'm wondering how you feel. Well, I have to say, as a quick side note, you brought in cheese, and as someone who I go to Ireland frequently. I'm frequently in Dublin, and when I first discovered the vegan cheese in Ireland as opposed to what they were producing in the States about 6 years ago, I could not figure out what the problem was. It's as though they had cornered the market, and it's because they have these Greeks come up into Dublin and create these vegan restaurants, and they made all of their vegan cheese out of olive oil. And it was like this revolution. And in the States, they were still throwing every chemical under the sun to try and create that cheese that wouldn't melt. It wouldn't do anything. This is back in the day, right? 2007, whatever. And it was horrendous. It would make you, it was just enough to make you kind of crawl away and cry. So there are certain things I think that vegans, particularly all over the world, have misconceptions about different countries that brought certain attributes or are still kind of clinging to other areas. And so it's interesting to note that there are products in other countries that I find most people would discover to be superior to other countries. And it's good to encourage people to kind of reach out, because we haven't completely globalized yet. No one's, come up with this idea and perception. And I know a lot of vegans that don't understand how easy it is to make things like vegan cheese.
So easy.
Yeah.
Ridiculously easy, and so much cheaper to do it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And you can fine tune it. If you like a little garlic, you can, it's all about anything from scratch that way. I want to get into, well, first of all, do you have a favorite, Sophie's Choice? Do you have a darling recipe that you could cite for breakfast, lunch, and dinner out of all of your recipes, or maybe a favorite of this month? I always make my children choose a favorite color every single day because it can change, but they need decisiveness. So if you
as in a favorite, 3 favorites from both the books?
Yeah, right now.
Yeah, I'd definitely say my non meatballs are a classic, and they're super versatile. I always demo those. I would definitely say my cashew truffle cheese. It's indulgent. I'd say that it's one of those dishes that can turn people, because it's good and it tastes like cheese and it's got hints of truffle. It's brilliant. And the last but not least, my pumpkin seed pesto. I make that on a weekly basis. I always have a tub of it in my fridge. It goes on everything. Brilliant on toast, great as a dressing, drizzled on soup. I mean, it's good, and it's nut free as well. So that's one of the other sort of angles that my recipes are clearly marked whether they contain nuts or not. So I've had a lot of clients,
and that's wonderful.
That can't eat nuts. So that's a good one.
Well, I'm glad you were able to pick 3. I usually get feedback from people like that couldn't possibly do that. So I like that you've got those 3 going.
I like those 3. Yeah, for sure.
You brought up earlier, and I want to climb into it. I usually always wait for somebody to drop the terms. I use the term vegan a lot because that is how the podcast series was developed. It was investigating vegan life. And that umbrella in and of itself is riddled and troubled with a lot of terms that get argued over. And now that they're being incorporated into advertising and marketing arguments or industries, it's becoming even more convoluted with, questions as to what sustains one term and another. I'm wondering where you personally define plant-based versus vegan.
So I was discussing this recently with someone, and it's been an interesting journey for me because what I forgot to mention is when I started cooking at these retreats, I went vegan and gluten-free because I had a health scare. I think I must have been 26 or 27. I basically was told that I would never have children. I stopped taking contraception pills and then had a really, really difficult time, and I got have something that's called endometriosis and polycystic ovary syndrome. So that sort of opened up a box, and at the same time I was starting this new business, so I decided to go vegan and gluten-free at the time and change my life, but not only through food. I mean, I changed a lot of other things as well, slowly but surely. So it's one of those things that I don't like talking about too much because everybody's journey is individual. However, 7 months down the line with this new business, I got pregnant again against all odds. So
yeah,
I'm definitely not saying, change it was the food that made that happen, because lots of different things happened during that period.
Right.
However, it had a massive impact on my life. So yes, let's go back to your question.
The vegan versus
Blunt, blunt.
plant-based. No, I think this ties in beautifully, because it, how we come to veganism, I think, is very, very important for people to understand as well. I've unearthed, stories just in the first 20 episodes, and then spending 10 years of my life prior to that. People come at it from spiritual points of view, I've spoken to academics that became vegan because it increases their intellectual performance, mathematicians. There are people that come to it to look more beautiful. There are people that come to it to perform better at sports. There's so many different reasons, and disease or ailments being one of them. I love it because it creates a lot of unlikely vegans. There are white, fat stockbrokers in the United States that are becoming vegan because they don't want to die. So it's like, there's just so many other areas that can kind of come to it. It's a unifying thing. And so I think that yours coming at it from a health standpoint really does help our audience and people listening to your story and your cookbook understand. I mean, I think it ties into your relationship with the beauty and the vitality of the food that you were talking about earlier. That relationship that you have with it having changed your health and made you feel better and return you to a homeostasis is so important. And I'm wondering within that, so there is this kind of argument between being vegan and being plant-based. And I want to know how you feel about it, and how you particularly feel people in England, where you're based, in the UK, how they feel about it.
So yeah, this was what I was going to come, the point that I was going to come to. So very recently, I sort of discovered that with what's going on now and sort of how veganism,
Bettina, I lost you again.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, you're back. So you said, what I was coming to was, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Yeah, so with what's been happening recently in terms of how huge veganism has become and how big the label has become, I sort of feel like to call yourself vegan in some aspects, it's for the animals, and then as long as whatever is on your plate hasn't suffered, then it's okay. It sort of goes under the vegan label. Whereas I feel that if you're plant-based, you're more environmentally focused and more sustainably focused, rather than the suffering of animals. So you care more about where your food is sourced from and where it's come from than it just being vegan.
Right.
That's kind of how I define the difference between the two.
Okay.
And with plant-based, I would say some people that call themselves plant-based, it means that they predominantly eat plant-based, but if they do eat animal products, then they are ethically sourced, but can or cannot be included. Okay. So that's my feeling of where it's going. It's more, I think the plant-based term is more flexible than the vegan.
Yes. And it's an interesting take on it, coming back to the suffering and things like that of animals. There's a lot of companies putting out products right now, and I'm not sure if it will change, but they're attaching a plant-based label to something that is not vegan. And I think that there are a lot of vegan consumers out there. Originally, when plant-based happened, it was a nicer way of saying vegan. People felt like it was separating it from some of the politics that had seemed like guerrilla warfare in the past, or something that was fringe, and bringing it more mainstream. But since then, at least in the United States, there have been a lot of companies that will say plant-based on the label. Vegans will buy that thinking it's vegan, and it's not vegan. It means merely that there's some plant-based articles or ingredients within it.
Wow, so, that's really
misleading. Yeah.
That is very misleading.
Yeah, it is. It's fun. I was actually speaking to an Australian vegan pub owner a couple of months ago before I got taken home for the quarantine. And she said the same thing, that they were having issues with that in Australia. So I think that that'll become interesting to see how people approach that. This was prior to the pandemic. And so with the pandemic, people may be backing away from some of those things. I don't know what your society and economy is doing exactly in Great Britain, but over here, Beyond Meat and Beyond Burger and things like that are hitting an all-time high as far as their stocks. The IPOs are really supposed to boom with these kinds of meat alternatives as kind of some of the fallout. I'm wondering, do you feel like the COVID-19 pandemic has changed your relationship or the way that you will speak with your customers moving forward about plant-based or vegan diets, or do you think it's kind of just deepened what you already knew?
For me personally, it definitely has deepened what I already know. And I think a lot more people are going down the route of supporting farmers, supporting farm to table, supporting basic ingredients, going back to baking, going back to fermenting. I think it's just opened up that door where you're forced to make things from scratch. Whereas before you had the options to really not do that and people were too busy. So I think it's had a really positive impact in the sense that people care a lot more where their food comes from. They've gained new skills in terms of cooking for themselves. I always say, rather than labeling anything, I think the greatest self-care act that you can do for yourself is to cook from scratch, because you know exactly what's going into that pot.
Yeah.
Set aside all labels. That is the one biggest thing that you can do for yourself, that is in terms of self-care. Take the time to source good ingredients. They don't have to be expensive, and cook from scratch.
Absolutely. I agree. And I personally feel like the energy created in the relationship with the food consumed changes the experience and the health thereafter as well. I'm wondering, do you, as you do a lot of consulting, if you go to your website, you find a lot of information based on you. It's great media presence, all of those things. As a food consultant, what do you foresee? First of all, what work have you done in the past, and who are you looking to work with in the future regarding consultancy?
So I've done a lot of recipe development for different brands and for hotels or for the restaurant industry. The way that I work and the way that where I'm headed, I think, is to find natural solutions, and to support sustainable and environmentally friendly farming as much as possible. To me, it's more important to sort of envelop those side of things rather than promoting or supporting a product that is vegan. And I think that is sort of the main, with so many companies coming out with vegan products, people sort of bypass how it's made, what it contains, where it comes from, what it supports, what it's packaged in. All of these things, to me, matter a lot. So I'm sort of coming at it from that angle of, I want to know where my products come from or where the ingredients come from, and support companies that do good.
Yes. And I think that you are in good company. I think that there are a lot of people that are, if they're not there right now, they're headed in that direction. And subsequent companies that help you source those things. I think a lot of people care, but just don't know how to allocate or figure out where those resources are.
Absolutely. And I do think that a lot of bigger companies are, cashing in on the fact that veganism has become big. And, not to mention any big names, but there are a lot of companies that are, dishing out vegan options, but then the way that they're sourcing their ingredients for all of their other products is, horrific. And they're still supporting factory farming, cheap labor, etc., etc. So, but they're sort of winning in terms of having a vegan offering, and people are buying into it, and it infuriates me, because I would never go and eat a vegan burger or a vegan fake chicken from those companies because the other part of what they support is
Right.
not great.
Well, and that's an interesting aspect too, getting back to returning very briefly to the conversation of vegan versus plant-based. There used to be an understanding when it was more of a minute group of people that there was a lot of ethos that went behind something being vegan. There was a sustainability normally attached to it. There was a responsibility, and there were all these deeper questions, which made it difficult, but people who were doing it didn't care. They wanted the payoff of that difficult nature. And one of those things is, going and getting a substitute chicken sandwich at Kentucky Fried Chicken. Here it still supports all of the most horrific practices that are happening. So, and it is what you're saying. And so I think that now that there's that choice, there is that murkiness that's kind of creeping into what is becoming a global, vegan conversation. So, and those things should be considered and brought in the forefront. I had so many people reach out and say, "Are you going to go try it?" when they released it. And I said, "No, why would I ever do that?" It's how little they thought through that. Like, oh, why would she do that? That would be furthering, it's, the irony
100%. It makes no sense. It's like, no, why would you want to go and try that? Yeah. Why would you want to eat a burger that's been fried on the same grill as the meat burgers?
Right.
It's just no.
Yeah.
No.
And I think once we have that conversation enough and funneling it through, I think that there will be people kind of putting those things together. And the next phase, I'm an optimist and I believe in human nature kind of coming through. And if we're going to break through with these original things, great to get those meat eaters off of it. But the conversation must always end with like ultimate accountability and transparency, which I think the food world in the United States has lacked since the 80s, And so getting back to a place where we know exactly how many chemicals and preservatives we're eating or slathering on our skin and everything else is coming, and I think it's going to be a game changer. At least that's my drive. I'm wondering, moving forward with you, what are your future goals? You spoke about your endeavors and how you were talking about wanting to get through to these sustainable farming methods and really continue on with that, like that knowledge. Are you looking at writing another book? And if so, can you tell us anything about it? And
sorry, you disappeared.
Oh, I'm back. Okay. What was the last thing you heard me say?
We were talking about.
Okay. I'm wondering, looking forward to the future. Can you hear me? No. Hello, Bettina, can you hear me? I can't hear you right now.
Yes, I can hear you now. We were talking about
consumption and all of those things. So I'm wondering.
Yes, and yeah.
Given that you have this kind of, we've spoken about, your future efforts really as you see yourself changing, getting into sustainable farming and practices and really continuing on that path. Have you looked forward to like your next 1 to 3 years of work? And will you be writing another book? If so, can you give us a preview or a snippet from that? Will you be pushing efforts into, what are your next 1 to 3 years for all of your endeavors?
Yeah, so I'm writing a third book. So I'm doing that over the summer. It will come out probably next year, next autumn. So it takes a long time to write a book. People don't realize this. So yeah, I'm writing that probably over the next sort of 3 months. I run a chef's academy where I teach other people how to become retreat chefs. So I've got a 7-year-old and I've sort of eased in on my traveling and instead teaching what I know. So I do 4 courses a year, it's an intensive 7-day course. It's super intimate. There's only 10 people on them. And basically I teach you everything I know that I've learned over the sort of past 7 to 8 years. So I'll be doing more of those and growing my business in terms of having a bigger reach, inspiring more people to include vegetables into their diets, definitely zoning in and learning more about agriculture myself by going to visit farms and supporting them. Also enveloping and sort of going into waste-free. Cooking waste-free is something that I've done as a given, because when you're on retreats, you are on a very sort of low budget, but you want to feed people as well as possible. So supporting vegetables that would normally get thrown out because they're not the right size, because they're not the right shape. So finding solutions on how to minimize that type of waste. And something that I've been toying with for a long time is opening up an outlet, and not like a restaurant, but everything is going online now, but doing meal options so that you can, on a subscription basis. But instead of offering meals that are just vegan, also using up wastage, and supporting organic and sustainable farming, and also eating seasonally, because that is something that we sort of don't do as much as we should do, because we've got access to so many different ingredients. We sort of don't follow the seasons as much as we used to.
And will
that's
you
something
elaborate on that? Because you have mentioned that. You mentioned that in your book, and I love the idea of it, because I do think that there's a perception, which I myself held for the majority of my life, that eating seasonally was no longer even necessary for good health, because we have these greenhouses all over the world that can produce food. Can you kind of, in a nutshell, explain to the audience why eating seasonally is important for you?
Well, let's take the strawberry, for example. I mean, if you eat a strawberry in winter, it's not going to taste the same, and it's definitely not going to have the same nutritional value if it's grown in a greenhouse compared to if it's grown out on a field in the height of summer when it's supposed to grow. And weaving in organic farming as well, I think that makes a huge difference. And eating things that are local. So an apple that is grown close to home rather than apple that has been picked 2 to 3, 4 weeks earlier and stored and then brought to you. There's a huge nutritional difference there, and also a difference in taste and quality. So the closer things are grown to your house, the shorter the time for picking, and the more nutritional value they hold. And I'm sure that you know that since we've industrialized farming from the 50s, there's a lot less nutritional value in our fruits and vegetables that have been flown over and grown. GMO is another wormhole that we can dive into, but we would be sitting here all evening. So all of those things matter. And rather than, a lot of people think that eating healthily means adding lots of layers into your food, into your cooking, and going to the supermarket and buying all these superfood tinctures. I'm of the opposite opinion. Simplify. Buy less, buy better quality, source your things locally, as seasonal as possible. And you'll get them for a better price as well, because things that are grown in abundance are usually better priced.
Right.
So
yeah, that's true. Anything in season is always far less expensive.
Exactly. And there's a joy of eating strawberries until you sort of feel like a strawberry during June and July, and then you wait all year to have them. And it might be a simple sort of naive thought, but there's a beauty in that, or waiting for asparagus season to come and eating lots of wonderful asparagus. Or blood oranges is another favorite season of mine. And then enjoy the fruits and vegetables at their height. They will taste better as well. You'll be surprised how amazing certain things can taste when they're eaten at the right time.
I agree. I love that. Well, we are running out of time, Bettina, but I wanted to ask you one final question, and that would be, a lot of people, particularly over the past 11 weeks, have taken stock in their own personal businesses. They've kind of reconversed with themselves over their values and their personal life. And I'm wondering if you've had such a dialogue with yourself, if you can offer up maybe 2 or 3 pieces of advice or axioms that you've kind of unearthed during this time of reflection that everyone has had, regarding either yourself or your journey or anything like that, that we kind of end on. I usually say 3 pieces of advice, but if there's 1 or 2, we'll take that as well. Is there anything that you proffer up to yourself in order to encourage or make things more enthusiastic, or even just pieces of sage wisdom that you've come to?
Throughout this period, or just in general?
Both, but usually throughout this period, throughout the past few weeks, there's been a pause for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Let's start with what I've definitely, it's been good for me to pause. I think in the last sort of 2 to 3 years, I've had an incredible workload, and I look back and I think, wow, how did I do that? It's definitely made me stop and think and enjoy the little things and have time to do things that I didn't have time to do before. Mm-hmm. So the pause button has been good for me, for sure. And I think it's been good for a lot of people, taking time to cook, taking time to bake, taking time to be with your family. I think we're all far, far too busy that we sort of, it's good, and things happen when we pause. Ideas are born, creativity is born. Yeah. So that's been really good. Words of advice, I always say perseverance and not giving up, and finding something that you're really passionate about and sticking with it. Because in today's society, that's got also to do with what I was talking about before, is not having patience, or that we're too busy. Things take time, and to have patience to allow them to take shape, and to persevere and have persistence to follow your dreams.
Absolutely. I like that. I think those are solid pieces. I'm wondering, you kind of dropped, are you still on the same Instagram handle? And can you mention it for everyone in the audience who would like to follow you? Bettina, are you there? Hi, I cannot hear you. If you can hear me. There you go. Are you back? Hello? I can.
Hello?
Hi, there
yes,
you are. Okay.
I'm back.
You have an Instagram handle that you can kind of mention so people can follow you and look at all of these beautiful pictures of meals?
Yes, absolutely. So it's Bettina's _kitchen, or if you just put Bettina's kitchen, you'll find me. And yeah, it's just like daily inspirations and a lot of stuff that I cook or we eat at home or cook for clients. It's all there.
That's wonderful. Well, we're out of time, but I wanted to say thank you so much for speaking with us today, Bettina, and giving us all of your culinary and philosophical advice. I do appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening.
Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, we have been speaking with Bettina Campolucci Bordi. You can find out more about her work on www.bettinaskitchen.com. And until we speak again next time, thank you for listening and giving us your time. Remember to eat clean, eat well, stay safe, and always bet on yourself. Sláinte.